Good morning. This is Black Spring with Autumn on your Friday. Hope you guys are doing well out there. It is July 11th, 2025. And I am just coming in just for a little bit on what I'm calling an 8 o'clock coffee Friday. And today we're going to just talk about, we've been talking about the BBB and but this time we're going to visit a different section of the actual BBB. That is the big beautiful bill, or otherwise known as one big beautiful bill. We're going to go into the actual another section of it, and I just want to just generally I just want to talk about the word choice. Okay, so let's talk about choices. So it's school choice is where it's going to be our centerpiece here. But when we think about just the word choice, okay, it's generally going to be it's going to be, I think language matters. And a choice to me is typically going to be, it can be manipulated in many ways. Like it's a noun generally. Okay. It's something that's, of course, it's abstract. It's not always tangible. The concept of it is conceptually a noun, because of its, it can be, it could be an adjective. Language matters. Okay, I say that all the time, and it's no less true in this particular case. Okay. So, we have choices, some common choices that we make choices all the time. We make choices for breakfast. Are you going to have coffee, or are you going to have tea, or are you going to have water, or are you going to have juice? Or for dinner, are you going to have grilled chicken, or a fried chicken? We have some common choices and some choices that are just a little bit more trivial. But then, of course, in this particular instance, we're dealing with something that's more, that involves, dare I say, the humanities. Okay, and those choices have a little bit more weight. And of course, there's a lot that goes into humanities. It goes into the human experience, and those are, of course, much more difficult in terms of choice. So let's just talk about that a little bit. So we're going to talk about the school choice, and where that particularly falls. Now, I know the BBB, we've discussed a few parts of the BBB in terms of we just did a few lines from the BBB. There was no way I was going to tackle that entire bill, because it was 900 plus pages, whether that was the original doc or whether it was a secondary piece. But I really want to get into that today. And we're going to go to the TNA. That is the New American. And we are going to look at, we're going to look at it, that as our centerpiece. It's going to be under, we're going to look at an article under federal school choice. Okay. I'm going to be able to show you some different sides, some different sides of the argument for, against, and different factions of the argument. You'll get to decide what you think, or where you stand on this issue. By the end of it, you may already know, but maybe, who knows? Maybe some section of this particular article will, maybe will enlighten you and maybe influence. Okay, so just want to say good morning again. Good morning, Marcy T. Good morning. So let's just look at this really, okay, just conceptually. Let's go to the article really quickly here. Okay, so we have, like I said, we have trivial choices in life, and then we have those choices that are greatly affected by humanities. Okay, there's a lot going on. The BBB is going to be, I think the BBB is going to be talked about for several months to come. So it might be, I'm not going to say it's sensationalized or trending right now, but I seriously don't think that I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon, because I know there's there's some other elements on that particular bill that people are talking about. Some people are not happy with the outcome. So we're going to get to that. I'm going to bring this to your screen. And I'm also going to, so good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for coming in. So let's look at this. Let's see. Maybe I'll bring, we'll just have just a little bit of feedback from you guys. So this one is from Alex Newman, and this was published on the 7th. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of discussion for years to come. Do I think these are permanent? Do I think these are permanent pieces? I'm not sure. It's just kind of a pendulum. Permanent this, permanent cuts this. And then, of course, things, change over time. So let's just have a look at it. So according to this is a federal school choice program signed into law. And this is by Alex Newman of the New American. Just FYI, just a smidge on Alex Newman. Alex Newman is, of course, he is, for my last understanding was that he's actually, of course, he's based in America, but he does attend a lot of these UN. He definitely has a beat on the global pulse when it comes to their agenda. I think he has, he's willing to go places that, that the mainstream or the normie so-called journalists will go to find out where they are. So we're going to go there. Okay, so just hang on one second here. I just want to make a little bit of an adjustment to my own screen here. Let's just yank me down here for a second. All right, so let's look. All right. In this case, I want you to be able to see the full screen here. Let's see. Let's go ahead and fix this up right now. All right, so here we are. Okay, so let's go to this really quickly. All right, so according to this, a national, quote, school choice, end quote, program in the, quote, big, beautiful bill, end quote, was signed into law on Independence Day by President Donald Trump, drawing both applause and concerns from conservatives. Language protecting liberty and seeking to restrain government controls of private schools was stripped from the legislation before passage. Okay, so to me, that's kind of like note to self. Okay, supporters argued that the program, even though it was scaled back significantly from the original version passed by the House, will still help some families to choose private schools. Okay, all right, so yeah, a little bit of optimism there. Let's keep going. Critics on the left, teachers unions, the legacy media, and Democrats shrieked about the alleged attack on government education. Among other concerns, they suggested this was calculated to redirect funds into private and religious education at the expense of government schools. Opponents on the right, though, had very different concerns. They warned that the scheme would eventually be used to try to control non-government education options, quote, choice, end quote, programs in other nations such as Sweden, Canada, South Africa, Australia, Belgium, Germany, and more have done exactly that. Even some states have moved in that direction. Under the provisions of the new law, taxpayers who give money to a scholarship grant organization, so you got an SGO there, certified by the U.S. Treasury, will receive a tax credit for the amount contributed. The donation is limited to either $5,000 or 10% of income. Those government, quote, SGOs, end quote, as they are called, are then supposed to grant scholarships to students and families in their states for private education, homeschooling, and other qualified educational expenses. The program is capped at $5 billion for now. A similar state-level scheme in Florida routes money through an, quote, SGO, end quote, known as, quote, Step Up, end quote. That organization has partnered with a radical anti-Christian LGBT group to promote and some other indoctrination in private education. The initial version of the, quote, big beautiful bill passed by the U.S. House of Representatives would have expanded the new voucher program nationwide. But the version that passed into law requires states to opt into the program. So there you go. Keep that word choice in there. See that choice, right? We're still on the choice. Okay, so that provision which was inserted by the U.S. Senate means that most Democrat-controlled states will not participate. Writing on social media, U.S. Representative Keith Self said that, quote, leave blue state students in failing schools with, quote, optional school choice, end quote. GOP lawmakers vowed to keep pushing to expand the program more, though the U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who sponsored the original provision, said enshrining the, quote, first ever federal school choice provision into our nation's tax code is a major win, end quote. But more will be done, he promised. Quote, we will continue to advocate for and pass improvements moving forward, end quote, added Cassidy, whose political campaigns have been lavishly funded by Big Pharma and other groups hoping to expand sales of their government-funded schemes into private schools. Across the conservative internet and media ecosystems, commentators and lawmakers claim the original House version would have protected private schools from federal control. But despite some language purporting to limit government meddling, the camel's nose of government control was certainly going to get under the tent. As documented by the Newman Report on June 9th, the House's original language would have forced private schools taking the money to obey costly, unconstitutional federal statutes and mandates. Of particular concern, all participants in the program would have been forced to obey the individuals that's the IDEA, that will eventually embed Medicaid and, quote, mental health programs into private education, experts warn. The UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, that's UNESCO, has long called for offering public funds to private schools in exchange for compliance. In a major report on regulating, quote, non-state education providers, and, quote, taxpayer funding was touted as the key mechanism to bringing government control, testing standards, and more. Even with the IDEA provision removed, critics still expressed numerous concerns with the measure that passed. Richard Hawkins, who served as chairman of an umbrella group for ministries involved in Christian education known as the, quote, Christian Education Initiative, CEI, sounded the alarm about the prospect of government regulation. As an example, he pointed to President Biden's decree that any school receiving federal funds had to open girls' restrooms to, quote, with both federal and state controls or potential for controls on private education. This is the wrong move, knowing the global-minded elites push for control, end quote, the CEI chief told the Newman Report. Quote, we have so little influence at the federal level to stop bad legislation compared with the influence with state legislatures, end quote, he continued. Quote, I'm convinced our federal representatives no longer consider us their constituents. They're sold out to their major donors, end quote. Rather than getting the federal government more involved in education and government more deeply involved with private schools, Congress in America should be moving in the opposite direction. Biblically, we need to eliminate civil government intrusion into the family's duty and responsibility, said Hawkins, whose organization represents multiple prominent ministries involved in Christian education. Quote, the feds need to get away from all aspects of education from a constitutional stance, end quote. Even some of the lawmakers and lobbying organizations involved in pushing the measure admitted privately to the Newman Report they are concerned about the prospect of government regulation. However, they said the benefits would hopefully outweigh the risk. Okay, here we go. One of the powerhouses behind the push for government-funded, quote, school choice, the American Federation for Children, celebrated the measure's passage, calling it a quote, a historic moment for America's families and students, end quote. AFC CEO Tommy Schultz vowed to continue the fight and seek for it to be expanded as soon as possible, end quote. Schultz appears to have taken over as lead spokesman after the previous face of the organization, who was listed on the United Nations Education Agency's website, who was outed as a former porn star. Yikes, guys. I'm telling I should have was a disclaimer for this morning. Proceed with caution or take cover or lock the door, hide the kids. I don't know which one. I left that out. However, funding for the controversial group comes from, among other sources, billionaire heiress Betsy DeVos. She helped save the deeply unpopular Common Core in Michigan and signed an international agreement calling for further, quote, internationalization, end quote, of education. Even more alarming, she publicly called for redefining, quote, public education to include all education, including private schools. Billionaire population control zealot, Skates, another key figure behind Common Core and the CV hysteria, is another major financier of the government-funded, quote, school choice movement. He also signed a deal with UNESCO to globalize education prior to his involvement with Common Core. The heirs to the Walmart fortune have also been a large source of funds for the government-funded, quote, school choice movement. Other large financiers of the effort include the Koch-backed organizations. Okay, as you can see, of course, you always have these heavyweights. Can I call them heavyweights? They always weigh in. Okay, they always seem to weigh in on things that really are going to affect mass populations and not directly affect them. I mean, give me a break. Skill on the skates. I mean, are his kids or grandchildren or generations of his family going to actually attend public schools? The average private school? Probably not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they attend boarding schools. Maybe they attend, European boarding schools. I don't know. But it's not going to be something the average Joe is going to have access to. So let's just keep going here. Okay, so I talked about the word how. Okay, so we talk about this being, quote, federal school choice, which to me, here we go. We go back to that whole piece on the pitch about, I talked about humanities, right? That's going to be, the thing about liberty and freedom in this country, it's more apparent to me that you're really only as, your liberties and your freedoms are only as far as, is only as far as the author of the idea goes. Okay. And then after that, okay, when you have a choice, then what do we have? My body, my choice. We have all of these choices, but there's always going to be somebody making a choice that doesn't exactly align with somebody else's values. The more liberties and ideas that are created, it will inspire other groups to be more liberal with and creative with their ideas that don't necessarily share the same values. So the question or the circular logic comes in, I think comes back to, unfortunately, maybe it's a logical fallacy that, we are only as free as the ideation or the approval or the author's imagination or wonder takes him or her. And to me, we'll never be, I don't know if we'll ever have, because we started out with people putting things in place, putting institutions in place, which I personally think, government controlling education, maybe that wasn't the best idea from the beginning. But then to try to undo something like that is, it's quite a bit of a feat. Or to try to put, like they're saying about, they're talking about this SGO, the Scholarship Granting Organization. Well, are they going to be able to stop? Are you going to be able to control? Are you going to then try to tell people who can actually donate to this Scholarship Granting Organization? It just gets to be, you can go down a rabbit hole. You can go down a huge rabbit hole with all of this. But there again, you have, so here again, as we talked about before, you have the left, the right, and you have the global control, the pit. Eventually, there will be a pit technique. Or what is the technique for anybody as LEOs or law enforcement out there? What is the pit technique to stop a car? To stop a car that's not following the rules or that's breaking the law. A pit technique for for cars that are, they want you to stop. So yeah, to try to get, for a traffic stop pit technique. So, I don't know. Just, it gets to be tough out here, because to me, I don't agree with all this. They call it precision immobilization technique. It's also known as the pursuit intervention technique. It's a law enforcement tactic used to stop a fleeing vehicle by forcing it to spin out or come to a stop. And to me, is that not what we see in these politics? But everybody runs around about talking about freedom, and and then some people say, okay, well, my rights end where your rights end, where mine begin. We just get into it. It can spin. The whole thing just keeps spinning. So that's going to be interesting to see. Many people have chosen some of the states. Some of the parents have chosen to apply for school choice vouchers. Some people have gone into that, but like I said, there's going to be, if it's federal, then it's going to have some restrictions on it. It's going to, anything federal or anything that's involving taxes. How in the world are you going to have freedom with that? How are you not going to feel the grapples of government if you put federal on the front of anything? I'm just saying, how are you not going to get that? You are going to, there's going to be a grapple the whole time. And you may not like it, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to control scholarship granting organizations. You might have organizations that are going to support other things that people don't agree with in schools. They might bring in some type of PPP. Yeah, Planned Parenthood might have a scholarship granting organization. So once you get into the weeds of these things, or it could very well spin out of control. And then there comes, I think there's a government pit technique in which, they're going to try to put in guardrails to try to stop it. They're going to try to pit the moves of these scholarship granting organizations. So just let me know what you think in the comments section. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Marcy T, for coming in. I really appreciate it. And let's see. So yeah, what I was going to put out just a little bit, just a couple of minutes here. So I appreciate you guys so much for joining me for 23 minutes and 26 seconds as we talk about not just a choice, but the big, beautiful bill, school choice, where it stands right now. I can see that this is going to be a living, breathing situation, which is going to, there's going to be a dialogue going on for a while. Okay, so if you want to grab, let's see, just a couple of minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to get out of here. I just thought that I wanted to bring that. I just thought it was important to bring it up. So a lot of things are happening. There's also, I'm hearing reports on funding freezes that were I guess effectively due by July 1, but they're not. So there's a lot that's going to happen. Okay, a lot. So let's see. We'll just take a couple more minutes here. But yes, so I was looking at some of these pieces. Like, of course, you may not agree with what is this Betsy DeVos. I mean, these are globalists. These people, once they're, I mean, they're elite. They're elite. Okay, they have a globalist vision. They believe in some of them believe in, population control. They want to control everything. Some people consider some of these institutions as indoctrination camps. Some people have their own specific views just based on, just the background. We've had judges in the past that look to international law rather than to this guy. I mean, hey, but that's what you have. And liberty gets a little bit thin. It starts to spread a little bit thin after a while. So have a look over this. This is the newamerican.com, and the federal quote school choice end quote program signed into law. So I'm sure we'll have more developments on that. So I appreciate everyone for coming in, and we will catch up later. You guys have a great rest of the day. If I have anything else, I will come back. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.